Are you planning a trip to Craters of the Moon National Monument, or wondering if it's worth your time to do a bit of a bypass on your route through Idaho and stop and see this beautiful site? Absolutely, it is worth your time to see Craters of the Moon National Monument. It's been one of our favorite national monuments we've been to. I'll show you in this video the reasons why it's great, how you're going to get here logistically, and some things you want to know about some apps and stuff ahead of time, sites to see while you're at the park, and then places you could camp. So Craters of the Moon National Monument is located in Idaho. So this is looking at a map of Idaho. When we did this trip, we actually came up on 15 because we were down in western Colorado. We came up to Pocatello, and then at this point in time, you're heading off of the main interstates, heading up here to Blackfoot. You take this Highway 26 up to Arco, and that's the town where we stayed at. I'll show you our camping stuff at the end. But you have this big stretch until you really get to your next town, which is Cary. And I don't recall having any RV parks or any place there to stay. Of course, there's something in Craters, and we'll talk more about that at the end. But basically, you're probably going to be staying in Arco or near this area. And the entrance to the park is right about here where these trees are. So your one entrance to the park is up here. And then there's one winding road that will come into Craters of the Moon National Monument and let you see things, and then you take that same road to get back out to this main highway up here at 26. And before we jump into the actual video and going through the park, I wanted to mention that there's two apps that would be pretty helpful for you in going to Craters of the Moon. The NPS app is the first app to talk about, and this is helpful for any national park service area that you're going to. So this is a brand new app that they just released, super useful. You can go in and find the park. I had already pulled up Craters, so it's here, easily accessible, and you can see all the information. So they have what to do when you're here, the trails, map information, where you can camp if possible, where you can stay, visitor centers, things like that, and all the details about the park. And if you click in on one of those things, like on what to see, you can see here that they have the different trails listed, and you can go into any of those individual items and read more about that area, see the map for the area, accessibility information, any sort of stuff like that. So this is a really great app. If I head back out from there, you can see that you can also save this park for offline use. So you would slide that over and it'll download the information for that park so you can use it when you actually go to the park, because often the parks don't have internet access or cell phone service when you're there. The other one to talk about, and I don't know if they still have it, is the Craters app. And this was the Craters of the Moon app that they had in place before the NPS app just opened up here a few weeks ago. And this one's a bit more basic, but it still has all the general details. You can see the map of the park, you can see the individual trails, and then there's some information about each trail. And I had downloaded this before we went on our trip, and I was able to just pull it open and read about some of the features and things with the park as we were going on those different trails. Tells you a little bit about, the wildlife and stuff like that. But again, I don't know if this app is still available now, given that they have the NPS app out. Before you even go into the main entrance, there's actually places off the highway where you can pull over, and there's interpretive signs, and you can already start seeing all of this dead space where there's just all the land is covered by the old volcanic rocks and ash, and you don't have anything that's growing here, and it just feels surreal, and it gives you a preview of what you're about to come into. But it's really cool to already start seeing this and realizing what you're heading into. And you see this on either side of the entrance, whether you're heading on the highway from kind of coming from the south or from the north. And then you enter into the actual park. There is only one entrance and exit for the park. So you're coming in, and then it's pretty much a big loop, and then you work your way back out of that loop. So that's the one way to get in and the one way to get out. You can see the campground up ahead in the left. The visitor center is the first thing that you come across, and it was not open because we didn't get here till about 5 o'clock. Actually, I think they weren't even open because of COVID, but we didn't need a park map because we already had our app loaded ahead of time. You can see the campground there, which is right across from the visitor center. This is a first come, first serve, and it does not accommodate larger RVs. It's not supposed to be for larger RVs. So we decided, you can see one larger RV there, but we decided that it really would have been a tight fit. Plus, it's always a little nerve-wracking when you're heading to a place and you don't know that you have a reservation and you've driven a really long way to get there. So we generally find that if it's a first come, first serve situation, we can't really rely on that when we're traveling as far as we do. But that is a campground. If you wanted to check that out, or it's an off-season time and you thought it might be worth it and you'd be able to get a spot. If you weren't staying and you're just driving through and you have an RV with you, especially a big rig, you can see that the road is definitely doable. You're not dealing with any sort of major switchbacks or tight tunnels or anything like that. But you might run into some issues when it comes to parking at the various locations when you want to get out and hike, because the parking is not necessarily set up with a bunch of pull-through spots. You can see one of the trails in the distance there. I think that's one of the North Crater Trail's entrances. We went ahead and parked at a parking lot and then did the Devil's Orchard trailhead. And this trail is probably only about a mile long, and it makes one big loop. So you get to see a bunch of the different sites. There's some interpretive signs along the way, and nice, easy trail. Easy to do if you were pushing a stroller, or easy for your kids to walk, but a chance to really see some of this cool stuff. I also want to point out that we are here the first week of September. So this is a hot time of year. It was unseasonably hot this summer, so I think it was probably 93, 92 for the high in the day, and that's why we waited until about 5 p.m. to even enter and go to the park, because it would have just been way too hot to be there with those big black rocks and just all the concrete and the heat and not a lot of shade and tree coverage. And we decided to go in the evening, and it was perfect. It was beautiful, and we got to see some amazing sunsets, which we'll show you here in the videos. And just a little background history. So the explorer Robert Limpert actually came through this area in the 1920s and then wrote an article for National Geographic that was published in 1924 called Among the Craters of the Moon. And when that article came to President Calvin Coolidge, and he saw that along with pictures and different narration, he decided to name this a monument, and the name took, Craters of the Moon National Monument. So it's been a monument since the 20s. I wouldn't be surprised if in my lifetime it actually became a national park. It certainly has the land space to be large enough for a park, and unique features with all the geologic features and the way that the rock formations and everything are still. So who knows, maybe that'll happen someday. After we left Devil's Orchard Trail, we headed further along the path to the next location, Inferno Cone. Inferno Cone is a steep hike up the side of a cinder cone, but once you get up there, you actually can see off into the distance a full 360-degree view of the park, and it's really spectacular. So you can see the parking lot here, not necessarily open to RVs, but you can park your vehicle. There weren't a lot of people there the time of year when we went, or the time of day when we went, but we hiked up to the top. Not a very far distance, but probably 16-15% grades as you're heading up there. You can see the girls liked pretending that we were on the moon, and pretty spectacular views once you do make it to the top. You can see here some of the rules. Pets are not allowed, no rock collecting obviously, and it is more steep than just a typical wheelchair grade incline. Next place we headed to was the Spatter Cones. Here there's two short trails that will take you to see the inside of the cones. The first we went to was Snow Cone Trail, and you can see there's beautiful views, all this land that's out in the distance. I think the most amazing thing though about Snow Cone Trail is that although it's really hot and dry in this climate, as you can see, and I think it was probably 93 or 94 degrees this day, if you look down into the cone, you can actually see snow down there at the base. So it's 90 degrees out and there is snow right there in that base, which I think is just incredible. Next place we headed was Spatter Cone Trail, and this again is a very short trail, does have a bit of a steep incline there, so not necessarily stroller or wheelchair friendly, but very short hike, easy to do, and you can go to the point where you come along the guardrail and you can see the inside of the spatter cone. Cool thing about this hike is that you're literally walking inside of the spatter cone. So these are kind of like mini volcanoes that form. So they had bursts of lava that shot up through them, I think about 2,000 years ago. And what you're left with here are kind of these holes that go deep into the ground. And there's a guardrail that kind of blocks you into as far as you're able to walk. But you can really see down deep into the cone, which is really exciting to be able to see. And this is the end of the loop for the main road that takes you in and out of Craters of the Moon National Monument. So at this point in time, we started working our way back. Normally, we would have gone to check out the caves, but the caves have been closed since COVID. You can see here at the end where the spatter cone trails are at, there's a couple of RV spots, bigger pull-throughs. So if you were just driving through, you didn't have time to stay, you would be able to park there. And then the visitor center had a bit of parking spaces where you could park and then use your tow vehicle to get around the park. The park's really too far to kind of bike it or hike the whole thing, walk throughout it. So you're definitely going to want a vehicle with you. Unless maybe electric bikes would work because it's not that far of a distance. And like I was mentioning, the caves are a really cool thing to see, and we would really love to have seen them, but they were closed. If you want to see what the cave tours look like, my friend Leslie over at Elementary Explorers has a nice video that shows you what the caves look like and doing the cave tours. So check that out. I'll link it below. In terms of camping, I mentioned there's a small campground there right at the NPS site, but it's first come, first serve, doesn't necessarily fit for large rigs, and it doesn't have any hookups. So not necessarily a great option if you're driving a long distance or if you want to make sure that you have power because you have a dog or something that's staying inside of the RV. We ended up staying at the Arco KOA, and we have a whole review just on the Arco KOA, so you can watch that and check it out, see what you think about that. But that is really your closest location for full hookups to Craters of the Moon National Monument. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video was useful for you. If it was useful, please give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to us for more content about the national parks and traveling with your RV and with your family. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at RV Homeschool. Thanks so much for watching, and safe travels.